behind the paramway, that taste in shock. I opened my eyes wide and looked down at my daughter. Emily. It was the first time she had called me Mom. Emily, my husband's daughter from his previous marriage, hadn't warmed up to me at all this past year. But now she called me for the first time. I was on the verge of tears when she reached out her right hand to me. In her open palm was a ring. Upon closer inspection, it was a wedding ring. It looked like it was sized for a woman. As Emily, the child I didn't give birth to, lowered her gaze and trembled, I knelt down beside her. "It's from your real mom. Do you want to meet her?" My husband was on a business trip abroad. Feeling lonely with just the two of us, I gently asked her, "Elwer, I want you to throw it away." Then, well, as I listened to Emily's story, I felt anger building up inside me. I should leave, right? I tightly hugged my 10-year-old daughter, who came to such a conclusion. Stroking Emily's crying head, I whispered, "Tell that person tomorrow that I'll do as she wishes. I won't forgive anyone who makes my daughter cry. They'll get what they deserve." My name is Catherine, 29 years old. I got married last year and am currently a stay-at-home mom. My husband, Bob, is 37 and it's a second marriage for both of us. We met at work. Excluding the fact that the company was owned by my father, we had a typical senior-junior relationship. By the time I joined the company, he had already divorced his previous wife, but he was a very reliable senior. The Emily, Bob's daughter, is 10. Even after being married to Bob for a year, she hadn't warmed up to me at all. Emily would answer when I asked something. She would eat all her meals without leaving anything. But she never initiated a conversation with me or talked about school or friends. I understand it's a tricky age, and maybe that's just how it is, but I couldn't help but feel lonely. I heard that the relationship between Emily's real mother, Linda, and Bob was not good. Linda was a heavy drinker and had multiple affairs. If it weren't for Emily, Bob said they would have divorced sooner. There were times when Bob would come home late at night and find the house empty. It was said that once or twice, a kindergarten-aged Emily was left alone, crying. Because of this, they often had marital disputes. Emily apparently saw all this and kept saying through her tears, "I don't want you guys to split up." Back then, Emily really had it tough. That's what Bob said. Indeed, she was left alone at home, feeling lonely and scared, crying and then hearing her parents argue because of it. It was probably a time when she needed her mom's affection the most. Every day, she should have been playing, laughing with her friends, unconditionally loved by her mom and dad, and going to bed happy. When she was in kindergarten, those should have been her days. I wanted to tell Linda straight to her face that she was a failure as a mother. The day Emily started second grade, Linda disappeared, leaving only a divorce paper with a ring and signature on the table. The breakfast dishes were still dirty, and the laundry wasn't done either. Emily probably didn't even understand what a divorce paper was. Thinking about how Emily felt waiting for her mother in such a situation broke my heart. For a year after that, Bob raised Emily on his own. But before that, Bob, being my senior, had often taught me and helped me with my work. So, I thought it was my turn to help him out, taking on some of his tasks and working late with him so he could get home earlier. But I wasn't the only one. Everyone supported Bob because he was competent and had a kind personality. When the school called because Emily had a fever, I was the one who made a fuss. "Please go home to her. It's so sad she's sick." Well, I have a meeting in the afternoon. At least I want to make an apology call to them first. "Boss, can he go home right away?" I can make the apology call. My voice echoed down the corridor. I'll explain it to them. It's my dad, who happened to be passing by. Let Bob go home immediately. After work, I visited Emily, and that incident brought Bob and me closer than ever before. My parents, who knew about Bob's reputation and character at the company, didn't object to our marriage, even though he was divorced. I consider Emily as my real family. I showed her my feelings even a year after our marriage. Emily hadn't warmed up to me. But on the night Bob left for an international business trip, Emily spoke to me. Mom, actually. I stopped cooking and turned around. I looked down at Emily in disbelief. She finally called me for the first time. At the same time, I felt my vision blur, on the verge of tears. I sniffed and looked at Emily's outstretched right hand. On her palm was a small ring. Upon closer look, it was a wedding ring. Probably a woman's. It's my biological mother's. I wiped my hands on my apron and crouched down. Even if she was such a terrible mother, she might still be important to Emily. Bob was away on his business trip. I thought Emily might be feeling lonely with just me, a stranger, so I gently asked, "Do you want to see your real mom?" But Emily shook her head and said, "I want you to throw this away." Why? I wondered, baffled by her sudden request. "You know, I met my mom yesterday. Yesterday? After school. Not just yesterday. Several times on my way home, she was there, asking about my new mom. Even if I said I didn't know, she kept asking things about me. I wondered why. Did she want to confirm her last bit of maternal love and whether her daughter was being treated well? But my thoughts were completely overturned. My mom said, "Your new mom is pretty wealthy." Huh? I heard she's the daughter of the CEO where your dad works. Chills ran down my spine. I felt an overwhelming revulsion. Had she told anything else? My mom met with my dad. She told my dad to either send me over or bring money. But it seems like dad doesn't have much money. Mom said she's gonna talk to my new mom next. She told me to throw a fit and say I don't want to go to her place. Tears streamed down Emily's face. I felt a wave of anger rising within me. Should I leave? I embraced my 10-year-old daughter, who had come to such a heartbreaking conclusion. Yet, stroking Emily's tear-streaked face, I whispered, "Tell her tomorrow that you'll do as she wishes." I can't accept someone like that as a mother. She made my daughter cry, and she's gonna pay for it. That night, after Emily was asleep, I called Bob. I confirmed what Emily had told me earlier. It's true. I didn't tell you, Atrin, because I didn't want to worry you. But ambushing Emily, I didn't know about that either. It was news to me. However, I did ask Emily if she wanted to live with her mom. Even though she's no good, she's Emily's real mom. But Emily said she didn't want to. She wants to continue living here. But it seems Linda has been visiting her quite a few times. Bob's anger was palpable even over the phone. I understood his feelings entirely. Anyway, on the next school holiday, I'm gonna meet with Linda along with Emily. I told him. Bob responded with urgency in his voice. "Can you wait until I return from my trip?" "No, I can't." She made Emily cry. "I can't stay quiet any longer." I reassured Bob, saying, "Don't worry," and then hung up. The next day, as I was tidying my room, Emily came home from school. How was it today? Did she show up? Did you give her the note? Yes, she said to make sure I'm there at 10 on Saturday. All right, thank you. The note I gave her specified to meet at a coffee shop on a school-free Saturday. I bet Linda believes she's gonna get money without any suspicion. Seeing the sad expression on Emily's face, I suggested, how about we go buy some new clothes to wear? We gotta dress up nicely. It's gonna be the last time we see her on Saturday. Still looking unsure. I asked Emily one more time, "Are you really okay never seeing her again? I don't want to see someone who causes trouble for Dad and you." Emily said, her eyes filled with determination. "Well then, wash your hands and have some snacks from the fridge." I instructed, and she happily complied. Watching Emily energetically exclaim yeps and dash to the bathroom, I began putting the old books I'd taken out back into the paper bag. Emily and I were dressed in clothes that anyone could instantly recognize as high-end brands, and we headed towards our designated coffee shop. I usually wouldn't pick out such clothes. Whether they're expensive or not, I just want to dress Emily in clothes she looks good in and that she loves. However, today even this serves as a way to challenge the other party. All right, well actually, no matter what I or she says, you're gonna trust me, right? Emily, nodding firmly, had her head gently stroked by me. Holding hands, we confidently walked into the coffee shop. "Oh, Emily, you're wearing such lovely clothes." "It really suits you," Linda, who was already there, said with a big grin on her face. "Sit next to your mother," she instructed, ignoring Linda's words. Emily chose to sit next to me. Linda's face twitched slightly, but she quickly put on a smile to cover it up. I also smiled and deliberately placed a heavy paper bag and a branded purse right in front of Emily. There's something precious inside. Then keep an eye on it. The color in Linda's eyes changed. She was greedily staring at the paper bag, probably thinking it contained a luxury purse and money. I ordered a coffee for myself and a cake set for Emily. After introducing ourselves, I quickly brought up the topic. "Do you want Emily back, huh?" "Yes, indeed. She's such a lovely girl. I just want to raise her on my own," Linda replied. "Really? I see. I heard from Bob that you, Catherine, truly love Emily like she's your own daughter." "Of course I do." "Well, it breaks my heart to think of taking Emily away from someone like you. So, I was thinking maybe you'd give me something in return." Depending not to understand. I tilted my head. Something in return? Like what? Then you know what I mean. Sorry, I'm not really familiar with such things. During the ensuing awkward silence, I sipped my coffee. Well, Emily, who'd been looking down at her phone since earlier, but I gently urged her to try her cake, saying, "Eat up, it's delicious." Linda clicked her tongue in slight annoyance. After a few moments of silence, she leaned in, seemingly impatient. "I'm money. Just money," I purposely asked back in a slightly louder voice. Linda frowned and sighed. "Obviously, I'm giving up my precious daughter. I deserve some compensation," I interrupted. "I'm a mother too. I know how precious a child can be. I have no intention of snatching Emily away from you." Linda sat there with her mouth agape. Emily looked surprised, dropping her fork and staring at me. I picked up the fallen fork and handed it back to Emily. She might have felt betrayed. It hurt me to think so, but since Emily had nodded in trust earlier, I decided to trust her as well. "What on earth are you talking about?" Linda exclaimed. "As I said, if both you and Emily wish, I will return Emily to you. I'll even help persuade Bob," I assured. Linda said in disbelief. "Hold on a minute," chuckling. She looked over at Emily with an anxious expression. Like sections. "Emily, you don't want to be separated from Catherine and your dad, do you?" she said, almost accusingly. Emily looked at Linda, then at me, and looked down. Lifting her face, she replied, "Either way is fine." Then she dropped her gaze to her smartphone. "Are you crazy, Bang?" Linda slammed the table. Emily looked up in surprise. "Well then, I want child support. $10,000. "No, that's not enough. Give me $50,000 to start." Linda was desperate. Her patience was running thin, and her true colors were starting to show. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. "It's not up to you to decide. Linda, there should be a proper calculation for that. Discuss with Bob about paying more. It's not me who's gonna pay," I said firmly. Linda, who thought she'd get the money easily, was getting more and more frustrated. But I kept my cool and stared right back at her. This was just the beginning. I'm gonna push her into a corner to ensure she never shows up in front of Emily again. "You did tell me through Emily, right? That she'd do as I wished. You haven't done anything. Your father is a CEO, isn't he? He can afford it." As Linda's voice grew louder, I whispered, "People are watching." She looked around and shut her mouth. I exaggeratedly sighed and said, "What are you talking about? I checked with you first, right? You wanted to take custody of Emily. You said you wanted to raise her. I agreed to help. Is there a problem?" "What problem?" "You." Linda's lips trembled. I pressed on. "Also, Linda, how do you plan to support Emily? Child support is meant for Emily's necessities, not for your luxury, you know. That's ridiculous. Bob left me for a younger woman. Emily, if it comes to that, you'll suffer with me. If you don't want that, beg this woman to pay me." Her desperation was evident. She always lived selfishly, depending on others, never making an effort. It's no wonder she felt betrayed. She had it coming. "So, are you saying this? Even though you have no intention of raising Emily, you want custody just for the money?" Linda didn't answer. She just glared at me. "I'll harass you until you pay up. I'll go to Emily's school. I'll scream outside your house. I'll make sure everyone knows you took her from me." Linda growled, showing she was beyond caring about appearances. "That's enough." I reached out and grabbed a bag in front of Emily. I took out a small voice recorder. I turned it off and showed it to Linda. "That's a clear threat. And after hearing this, no one would want to give you custody? It's not about whether you have money or not. It's beyond that." Linda jumped up. Damn it. She tried to snatch the recorder from me, but I pulled it away. As she lunged further, a hand from the side grabbed her wrist. Both Linda and I turned to look. "Dad." "Bob, why are you here?" Linda was shocked. I was curious too. Bob, with a cold look, said to Linda, "If you try to harm my wife, I'll sue." I had never seen Bob this assertive before. "Daddy," Emily exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Bob gently patted Emily's head. Although he was supposed to be on an overseas business trip, he was here. When asked why, he laughed and said, "How could it not come back during a family crisis?" He then turned his gaze back to Linda. "You really should realize that as a mother, our daughter no longer accepts you. You're acting in ways that make you despised as a person." Though his voice hinted at anger, Bob spoke calmly. This, however, surely dealt a heavy blow to Linda, possibly more than any argument I've presented before. After all, while Linda still addresses Bob by his old familiar name, Bob now addresses her more formally and speaks to her with a certain distance. Linda clenched her teeth, looking down, her body quivering with frustration. At least she began, her voice low and strained. Suddenly, she reached out, pulling a paper bag towards herself. "At least let me have this," she said, holding the bag protectively. "It's fine," I responded casually. Each Terrence the parrot was actually going to sell these books at a used bookstore later. "If you want them, they're yours." At my words, Linda let out a surprised hop. She checked the contents and quickly pushed them away. "Birchbox of the illustration. I don't want such dirty old books." This was exactly the reaction I expected from Linda. I couldn't help but sigh internally. Oh, Emily hurriedly picked up the book that had fallen to the floor. She dusted each one off, looking sympathetic, and returned them to the bag. I stood up and crouched next to Emily. "These books were given to me by your grandpa," I explained. "From Grandpa? Even though he's no longer with us. I thought he'd be okay with giving them away today. But since Linda doesn't seem to want them, would you like them?" "For Emily?" Emily looked up with a smile. Yes, I'll cherish and read them." "That's good to hear." I smiled back. "Some of these are first editions, worth thousands of dollars each." But you know, the one most taken aback by this was Linda. "One? No way. I'll take the books. You said you'd give them to me, right?" Bob sighed at the sight of Linda standing up. He firmly grabbed her shoulder and made her sit back down. "You never learn, do you? This now belongs to Emily." Linda tried to reason. "Bob, no." "Mr. Bob, please convince your wife." "I really need the money." Bob responded, "I don't care, but I will cover the bill for our drinks here." He then turned to me, suggesting that we get ready to leave. Bob turned to Linda once more. "I'll tell you one more time, if you ever harass my wife or daughter again, I will not hesitate to take legal action." After apologizing at the register for the commotion, we left the cafe. It turned out that Bob had requested an urgent return from his business trip, and the smartphone Emily was always fiddling with. Apparently, she'd been communicating with Bob. Since that day, Linda never showed up in front of Emily or me. However, after Bob returned from his business trip, Linda did visit him once. Apparently, she couldn't pay her rent and was evicted from her apartment, with worn-out clothes and carrying 2 bags. She pleaded with Bob, saying she only had a few $100s and needed help. Bob refused, advising her to live more responsibly. She cursed him out, but eventually sobbed uncontrollably, like a child. After that day, Emily and I became inseparable, like a real mother and daughter. She started helping me prepare dinner and fold the laundry. It wasn't that she felt obligated. She simply enjoyed spending time with me. Above all, we shared countless stories. Before you and Dad got married, when I had a fever, you came to visit me, didn't you? Yes, I heard about you before, but that was the first time I met you in person. I always thought how nice it would be if you were my mom.